Today I'm going to keep reading from Jeremiah. I'll read chapter 2. I don't know if I'm going to go through the whole book, but there are some topics that are always on my mind these days, and so I might jump around sometimes and look up specific verses that have to do with these concepts, but you know the way things work. You'll you find so many different things in the Bible, it doesn't matter what chapter you'll be reading. Whatever you're thinking about at the time, you can see there in many different places. And that's how I've been feeling about Jeremiah. So I'm going to start reading. I just have some pictures of old world stuff, but that's something that I've definitely been thinking about. And it seems to be on the conscious of a lot of like-minded people these days, thinking of, Tartaria threads are very often seen today, and beautiful pictures. People have more examples than ever, and it seems like people are more or less reaching a consensus that history is a big lie to cover up a real, much more interesting world history. And so it's kind of fun putting the pieces together. It brings me back to the Bible, and it makes me think of there's nothing new under the sun. That's what I think of. And I think that in the days of Noah, all of this stuff was already happening. I think of technology in a different way too. Like, I think that the fallen angels knew how to make computers already, but I think that they heavily gatekept that. I think a big thing about technology is how much they allow people to have access to. I don't know if you know the concept of you could take the smartest guy ever, and if you place him out in the desert, like the best electrical engineer, the smartest smarty pants out there, and you just place him in the desert and you say, okay, build me a toaster. Like, is that person actually capable? How long would it take the smartest electronics guy to build a toaster if they were just dropped in the middle of the desert? That's something that I think about sometimes. And how technology, what people think of as technology, is just what those in control allow the public to have access to. When I read the Old Testament and I hear about the idols that could talk and move, I don't think animatronics are new. And I believe in steampunk. All of the big cities have crazy steam generation. I was just reading a cool thread about New York City and the steam, and how people think that maybe it's like they take all the city trash and incinerate it and use that to power the steam. And people talking about old world buildings were purposefully built to leak because they had excellent steam powered heating, so they weren't so worried about everything being well insulated because they had amazing heating going on. Just such cool ideas on this topic. And I'm going to read, let me just start reading and then show pictures. I've already said a lot, but I personally think nothing new under the sun. I think that the fallen angels had technology. I think technology was being used in their wooden idols and their whatever. I think that sometimes the language in the past used to describe stuff, they were leaving out hidden technology that was being used. And I think that there's been different eras where the public had access to that technology or they didn't, but I think that there's nothing new about computers. And I think that people have made up societies where they claim to go to the moon multiple times in the past. I think they know it works because it's happened before. But this whole going from horse and buggy to going to the moon in however many years is a bunch of BS. I think that that tech has been around for ages, and it just takes them a while after each history reset to get things up and running again. You can't just turn on the processor, the computer processor plant, day one after a reset. It takes a while to get back to that. Okay, chapter 2. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I remember thee, the kindness of thy youth, the love of thine espousals, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown. So I love all the metaphors in the Bible that come up over and over again. Here's a wedding metaphor. Wedding metaphors get talked about a lot. Giving birth, a woman about to give birth, gets talked about a lot. And I think that there's so many things that go into these metaphors. Like when I think of the wedding, so there's going to be a wedding ceremony in the end. And you know how today all the truth is being revealed? People think of that as like the veil coming loose, the veil coming off of our heads. And that's a part of a wedding ceremony. And it's the part right before the action begins. Right before the real ceremony begins, that's when the bride lifts the veil. There's so many things. The giving birth too. Well, there's water above the firmament, and in the end, the firmament's going to open up like a scroll, and it's like water's breaking when a woman gives birth. There's just so many layers to these different metaphors, and ones that are like based in reality, based in things that will actually happen. The trumpets, the whole trumpet thing, like it probably really will. There will be sounding of trumpets. And verse 3 again, we're in Jeremiah chapter 2. Verse 3, Israel was holiness unto the Lord, and the firstfruits of his increase. All that devour him shall offend. Evil shall come upon them, saith the Lord. Hear ye the word of the Lord, O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, what iniquity have your fathers found in me, that they are gone far from me, and have walked after vanity, and are become vain? Neither said they, where is the Lord that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that led us through the wilderness, through a land of deserts and of pits, through a land of drought and of the shadow of death, through a land that no man passed through, and where no man dwelt. Really cool imagery, and I personally think that all of this could be happening in USA. I think that Pangea used to be a real thing, and that the earth was more connected, but I don't know, maybe that was before Noah's flood or something. Tower of Babel times seems likely that everything was much more connected. What else am I thinking of? Because some people were saying an idea for Jerusalem could be Paris, yeah? And would that make, I mean, that would make what they tell us today a little bit more realistic, that all of the desert stuff could be the Middle East or Africa or something. I don't know. I'm open. Anything is possible at this point. And eventually all truth shall be revealed. It'll be cool when the dust settles and we can hear real world history, what actually happened through the ages. But what's about to happen here, and then maybe I've already said enough at this point, and I'll just try to finish up the chapter. But what's coming right now in the next couple verses, it's interesting that, so they went through all these trials, that God should be with them more than ever, but it's like they immediately turn to idols, and they're worshiping Baal and other things like that. That makes me think of just how fantastical these old world cities probably were, with the Nephilim. And so, you know, the stories of go send out your spies, and then, oh man, they're carrying these huge things of grapes. It was probably like Wonderland for these people. And these cities, like what we're living in today, is the crumbs of empires of times past. And they don't make it like they used to. It'll never be like that again until New Jerusalem comes down from heaven. Who knows if these angels, the fallen angels, were building things inspired by, of course, New Jerusalem is going to be more amazing, but it does almost feel like a touch of the divine, the way, just how amazing these old world buildings are compared to today. And that's what a lot of these pictures are. When you see compilations today, people really connect with, man, what we have today sucks. And it's because so much of it has been destroyed. That really is a big part of World War I, World War II. It's just complete destruction. They're always dismantling these buildings. They'll just complain, oh, it sucks to take care of it. So they demolish it and replace them with a bunch of crap. But yeah, the whole idolatry thing. I think that it was like Wonderland when they came upon the cities with the giants in them. And I think that's part of why they were so easily led astray, that you go from wandering through the desert, barely surviving, only by the grace of God, literally like food falling from the sky to sustain you, and water coming out of rocks to sustain you. And then you're in Disneyland Wonderland when you come to the cities where the giants were. That's just something that makes sense to me, like how they could so easily run astray. It's because they like came upon Wonderland. So let me try to find what verse I'm in. I think it's verse 7. And I brought you into a plentiful country, to eat the fruit thereof, and the goodness thereof. But when ye entered, ye defiled my land, and made mine heritage an abomination. The priests said not, Where is the Lord? And they that handle the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after things that do not profit. So I think it's interesting, they're talking about pastors there. What was the difference in this context of a pastor versus a prophet? And verse 9, Wherefore I will yet plead with you, saith the Lord, and with your children's children will I plead. I love that second generation. God is always thinking bigger than what our first instinct. Already going to the children's children and those long time frames. And you see the enemy likes to copy this thing. The enemy is also notorious for working in timescales that most people don't think of. A lot of their plans are for the children's children, and that's how they operate. For pass over the isles of Chittim, and see, and send unto Kedar, and consider diligently, and see if there be such a thing. Hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. Be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid. Be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out of cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Interesting too, even talking about the difference between God's living waters and what I was just referencing earlier, coming out of rock, if it has to, or hewed, so talking about masonry here, cisterns that were made by man's hand. It's just very appropriate to what I'm talking about. Is Israel a servant? Is he a home-born slave? Why is he spoiled? The young lions roared upon him and yelled, and they made his land waste. His cities are burned without inhabitant. Also the children of Noph and Tahaphanes have broken the crown of thy head. Hast thou not procured this unto thyself, in that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God when he led thee by the way? And now what hast thou to do in the way of Egypt, to drink the waters of Sihor? Or what hast thou to do in the way of Assyria, to drink the waters of the river? Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backsliding shall reprove thee. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing, and bitter, that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee, saith the Lord, God of hosts. So I'll actually just stop there. I can always, if it's a long chapter, I can always break it up. And, right, I don't like to make up rules for myself that don't need to necessarily be followed. Beautiful, beautiful old world buildings. This one's very strange and unusual. All those domes. And of course, I think that dome shape, the reason it is so popular is because it's a representation of the heavens. There's the firmament, the dome firmament. That's also why planetariums shine things onto a dome. It's also why the covering over most telescopes are dome-shaped, because they know the truth. I think all the surface area is for a reason. Passive energy collection, I would imagine. It's not just for ornamentation, though it is breathtaking. The roofs are so cool. Total disconnect. This is something, it's been very, very, what's the word, vindicating? It makes me feel good to know that something about history just always was firing off my BS meter. It was so boring trying to learn history, and nothing ever stuck. And so it's kind of nice to know that it's a bunch of BS. And when I would look at these old pictures, there is such a disconnect between the people and the buildings around them. So I just love this topic. I love it because it is so, it clicks so true of all the questions that I had while this stuff is being shoved down your throat. The fake history is being shoved down your throat, and you're looking at the pictures like, I don't know about that. That just doesn't sound right. So this has been such a cool topic of research for people to come together and agree that the common narrative makes no sense, and to start piecing together what actually has been happening. And I just think it's so obvious that the Bible talks about this all the time. All the walled cities in the Bible, and they'd be taken over. And that would, of course, be one of the main reasons for conquest in times past. Have you seen that? Have you heard tales of that city? I'm going to make it mine. And this is what we get today. Apparently, let me see if I guess this is the building that was there. And they claim, oh, we built this mansion for the governor or whatever. And this is what it looks like today. It's almost a joke at this point, the type of architecture they give us. It's like they don't even try. Cool gardens. This is wild. This one is crazy. Each little one of these telling a story. Canon. I'll just end with this, because in my last video I was mentioning cannons and how you go to these old world cities, the Vatican or Paris, and they have cannons everywhere. And I think that they were using the cannons to destroy a lot of the old world buildings, because that's one of the biggest issues that they have. Each history reset, well, you're cutting the population greatly, and there is so much, even today, there's so much of this stuff still left around that they're still writing backstories, they're still demolishing them. So every reset, it's kind of on the list of things to do to just demolish these places. If you can't repurpose it and come up with a fake backstory, you can always knock it down. And I mean, as sad as it is, that shouldn't surprise anyone that some of the most beautiful, impressive ones have probably already been turned to dust by this point. It makes me think of the chain gangs. I say this all the time, but it just clicks with me. The whole concept of prisoners sitting there and breaking rocks into smaller rocks. That's literally what would happen a lot of times after the resets. They would start dismantling the buildings and chain people up and make them bust it down into dust. And because that's part of their MO agenda, is erasing history and rewriting their own. And so canon, to get to the point of the canon, I was mentioning how cannons are a part of this. And somebody pointed out, well, yeah, the word canon, remove the double N, and you have a word that has to do with, what we accept as the truth, or of, this works perfectly with history, right? Historical canon is going to be whatever those in control or those who have power decide we're going to accept as being historically accurate. So it's kind of an interesting connection there. And in the next video, as far as I know, I'll probably pick up where I left off at verse 20, but let me know what you think and leave your own comments. I love reading all the comments, and that's it for this video. God bless everyone.